Please stand and receive our leaders. Could we please stand and receive our leaders? Your Excellency, President Paul Kagame, Your Excellency, President Mohamed Ould Abdelaziz, although I'm not seeing him here, he might be coming later. Your President, Your Excellency, President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, President of the Republic of Uganda, Your Excellency, President Ali Bongo Ondimba, President of the Republic of Gabon, Your Excellencies, former heads of state, Your Excellency, Madame Zuma, President of the African Union Commission, ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the highest level sessions where we're going to have a panel of heads of state interacting with you, and we hope that amongst this audience, we shall have a massive representation of youth, although we cannot always tell youth by looking at somebody's face. I think the youth should come more and more to the front, because the president and the vice president and the deputy president are going to be treating the issue of Africa's future, and Africa's future surely belongs to the youth. Before I start, I would like to apologize for my sore throat this morning, but I hope that my voice will carry and you'll understand what I'm saying. We are talking about Africa that has been described, as you heard His Excellency President Paul Kagame say in his address, Africa that is rising. Gone is the Afro-pessimism of the 1980s, and now there is a new vibrancy, a new enthusiasm, a new optimism among Africans and among those who observe Africa and make judgments. Africa is described as the next pole of development, where economic development, investment in production, and so on and so forth, job creation will be done. This is going to be the site of construction. And a number of figures have been given to show that Africa has indeed taken a pride of place among economic groups in the world. And the figures are there. You have them. And yet you are faced with a number of challenges. One, it seems we have growth that is not followed by job creation, or that is not undergirded by job creation. And there's suspicion that this growth may come from the extraction and selling and exportation of our natural resources, in which our people, the majority of our people, are not really centrally concerned. Another challenge is the challenge of insecurity. We're now witnessing that more and more states in Africa, including states that used to be vaunted as relatively secure, calm, peaceful, and prosperous, going down the road of instability towards becoming failed states. We still have the specter of exclusionism, where large populations, large sections of our populations feel they are excluded from the processes, be they political, economic, social, or cultural. All these are challenges, and we have to confront them. Now, I will ask the distinguished leaders that we have there on the rostrum to take up these issues and speak for roughly 3 minutes. I will not be interrupting any one of them, but I trust that they will, in turn, limit themselves to 3 to 4 minutes max. After which, I shall ask a simple question to each one of the presenters here. And after that, we shall have a generalized debate where the audience will interface with the leaders. Then we shall have the final session, the final segment of this meeting will be where the leaders will make concluding remarks that should take no more than 1 minute, 30 seconds. If you agreed with this democratically decided procedure, I shall now start by inviting a young man who is an entrepreneur by the name of Ashish Thakkar, who is founder of Mara Group and Mara Foundation, to make remarks for 2 minutes. Ashish, 2 minutes, so that to set us going by giving us the concerns and the preoccupations of the youth of this continent. Ashish, please.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I'd like to thank the Africa Development Bank for organizing such a fantastic meeting, and the President and the government and the people of Rwanda for, as usual, exceeding expectations. My name is Ashish J. Thakkar. I'm the founder of the Mara Group and the Mara Foundation. I was a refugee, I'm a school dropout, an entrepreneur, a philanthropist, an astronaut, and a young African. And for full disclosure, the Mara Foundation defines youth according to my age, so you'll hear me say young quite a bit. One thing is, when Rwanda opened up its borders for the rest of the continent, for people to travel freely, it was a huge thing. The Mara Group has presence in 22 countries. As an African company, we suffer trying to get our people to travel across the continent. We as Africans do not have free mobility. And even though Rwanda opened up, unfortunately, reciprocation did not come from the rest of the continent. And I would like to look up to the AU and Madame Zuma in particular for your amazing leadership to really take the lead on something like this, where if it means naming and shaming other governments who are not reciprocating, who are not doing what they're supposed to, we need the basic essential policies in place, such as free movement of our people, and also the startup policies. When young entrepreneurs are the answer to youth, the unemployment issue is not going to be solved by foreign direct investment or large investments. It's going to be solved by nurturing small and medium enterprises. And if we create the right enabling environments and policies for the young entrepreneurs, we will be able to succeed. The youth are not the leaders for tomorrow, we're the leaders for today, but we need to be enabled. I think the second part, and my final part, is going to be, as much as formal education is extremely important, and even though I quit school at the age of 15, so I'm not the best role model, but informal education is extremely important. And when I say informal education, I mean things like mentorship. We need real guidance, advice, hand-holding, support. And we're very proud that as Mara Foundation, we launched a platform called the Mara Mentor Platform, which is a mentorship platform for young entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs. We benefit over 150,000 entrepreneurs across the continent today. But it's where people can get free guidance, advice, handhold, support, training, competitions, and all of these kinds of initiatives. It's online right now, called Mara Mentor, but it's going to be on mobile as well. And we're working with a lot of governments to launch this in government, so we'd be very happy to work with a lot of our governments across the continent to help launch this, to enable, empower, and inspire our young entrepreneurs and our women entrepreneurs. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you, Ashish, for those opening remarks. Now, I'll turn to the doyen of my panel, which is no other than His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, President of the Republic of Uganda. Following on what Ashish has just told us, President Museveni, could you tell us how much you value the contribution of youth in your country and how much you have actually, in practical terms, involved the youth of Uganda fully and putting them front and center in all the endeavors in economic and social development in Uganda. President Museveni, please.
Yes, His Excellency President Kagame and their excellencies and ladies and gentlemen, that is obvious that I value the youth of Uganda. However, I think even Amin in some way valued the youth also. But the issue is clarity. We must be clear. First of all, when we talk of youth, you are not talking of just biology. You must also talk of ideas, both ideological and also skills. Because if you simply say youth, that's just biology. But what skills do they have? What ideas do they have? Because you can be young but have old ideas. And secondly, there are a lot of people who waste time talking without any clarity. The sectors are 4, which are available where you can get jobs. Number 1, agriculture. And the challenge here is to modernize agriculture, because the Africans are in agriculture, but in subsistence agriculture, just for feeding themselves, not for money. The second sector is industry, big industry or small industry. The third one is services. The fourth one is ICT. Now, the fifth one is public service, government jobs. So in Uganda, you find people wasting a lot of time, but I ask them, if you have discovered a 6th sector, please tell me. That means, therefore, that each youth and his parents and his teachers must prepare themselves how to fit in one of these 5. Government sector, public service is limited. So therefore, the bigger opportunities are in the other 4: agriculture, industry, services, and ICT. Now, finally, I have been hearing the speech of the president of the bank, and I've also read some of these documents here. What I want to conclude with is that, which was not part of the question which Ulumwengu asked, is that Africa is a place of miracles. This is where you have got growth without infrastructure. They are saying here in these documents, all of them, that Africa has got higher rates of growth, 5.8%, our dear USA, 1.9%, global, average global is 3%, the Eurozone minus 0.4%, Africa, 5.8% rate of growth, in spite of having no infrastructure. No electricity, no roads, but somehow you get this high rate of growth. So that shows you the potential of this great land of yours. Now, the problem with that type of growth is that it grows in sectors which obviously don't need electricity. That is restaurants, there they can use candles. Hair salons, where they change the shape of women's hairs from this way to that way. Petrol stations, and so on. But the sectors that need electricity, especially manufacturing, will not grow. And that's where the imbalance is now. And those sectors, like manufacturing, are the ones which create more jobs. So I rest my case. I thank you very much.
Le président Ondimba de la République du Gabon, ceci sera en français. Vous êtes le chef de l'État d'un pays vraiment bénie, qui regorge plutôt de ressources immenses. Et nous savons que les ressources qu'on trouve sur le continent africain n'ont pas été toujours utilisées pour le développement et le progrès et le bien-être des peuples africains, des citoyens africains. Qu'est-ce que vous croyez qu'il faut faire pour que ces ressources vraiment soient au rendez-vous du développement des peuples africains, au lieu d'être des ressources qui sont exportées pour le bonheur et le développement des autres continents et les autres pays? Excellence.
Je vous remercie pour cette question. Je voudrais d'abord commencer par remercier mon frère et ami, le président Paul Kagame, et puis le peuple rwandais pour l'accueil extraordinaire qu'ils nous ont réservé et qui, je commence d'ailleurs à y prendre goût. C'est pour ça que vous me voyez ici de plus en plus. C'est une question cruciale et importante que celle qui est posée. Pour aller vite, nous avons effectivement sur le continent beaucoup de chance d'avoir encore des ressources naturelles très importantes. Et pourtant, celles-ci n'ont pas pu empêcher le continent d'être à la traîne et dans la situation que nous connaissons. Ceci d'abord vient du fait que la plupart de ces ressources naturelles ont commencé à être développées pendant la période coloniale. Et que nous, après les indépendances, nous avons poursuivi la manière dont les choses se faisaient. C'est-à-dire que, principalement, les ressources étaient exportées de manière brute, sans transformation. Et le challenge aujourd'hui pour nous, c'est de dire que nous ne pouvons pas continuer l'exportation de nos ressources non transformées, car celles-ci ont permis à un certain nombre de pays de créer des industries, des usines dans leur propre pays et de créer de la main-d'œuvre qui aurait dû se faire chez nous. C'est tout un pan de richesse qui a disparu. Et le problème pour nous, c'est de dire, bon, aujourd'hui, il faut que nous prenions les choses en main, mais il faut que nous puissions contrôler, depuis en amont jusqu'en aval, toute la chaîne de transformation des produits. C'est ce que nous essayons de faire au Gabon, parce que vous voyez que nous avons effectivement la première richesse au Gabon, c'est le bois. La forêt recouvre 88%. Et pourtant, nous n'exportions que des grumes. Mais nous ne transformions pas le bois. Or, c'est dans la valeur ajoutée des produits que se trouve réellement la richesse. Et dans la valeur ajoutée, dans le produit fini, vous remarquerez que la plupart du temps, les coûts ne changent pas, les prix varient très peu, alors que dans le produit brut, les coûts varient. Donc maintenant, c'est une question pour nous d'ambition et qui est une question vitale, parce que c'est dans la transformation de l'Afrique, dans la transformation de ses ressources, qu'il y aura la possibilité pour nous d'apporter du job à tous nos jeunes et de former ces jeunes pour justement venir prendre en charge toutes ces industries, les transformer et permettre, comme le disait le président Museveni, sans transformation, nous avons des taux de croissance qui sont déjà élevés. Imaginez maintenant avec la transformation ce que ça peut être. Mais ceci implique évidemment que nous puissions aller vers une politique importante du développement de l'énergie qui va servir pour les besoins industriels, mais aussi pour les servir pour les besoins basiques des personnes. Donc toutes ces choses-là, aujourd'hui, représentent le défi majeur. Et c'est la raison pour laquelle nous avions imaginé que nous devrions prendre, par exemple, l'horizon 2020 pour dire qu'après cet horizon-là, nous ne devrions plus en Afrique continuer à exporter de manière brute et que nous devions aller vers la transformation de nos ressources naturelles.
Je vous remercie très sincèrement, Monsieur le Président. Your Excellency, President Paul Kagame, you'll forgive me for this breach of protocol because I'm going to call upon the Deputy President of Kenya to go before you because I want to reserve the last question in this major segment for you at the end of the the others. Your Excellency, Deputy President William Ruto, karibu sana.
Asante.
You are young. In this panel, you are the Benjamin. Really, not Benjamin Mkapa, but Benjamin of the Bible. You are young. You came to power with your chief, President Uhuru Kenyatta, on a promise of a more youthful, vigorous, committed, engaged, .com generation. And yet Kenya is faced with so many problems. Security is number one right now, if I'm not wrong. But it goes very closely with issues of inclusion or exclusion. People who feel that they are not part of the process of development, they don't share enough in the national cake, they are left by the wayside, and these will necessarily not be very anxious to fight for the security of any country at all, not only Kenya, any country. People need to be made to feel that they are part of the processes ongoing in those countries. What are you doing as the government of Kenya to confront these issues of exclusion, perceived or real, of ethnic marginalization, perceived or real, of religious intolerance, again, perceived or real?
Thank you very much, Mr. Ulimwengu. You have been spot on the platform upon which we ascended to leadership in Kenya. And against many odds, Kenyans made that possible because of the great promise that comes with leadership that contextualizes the needs and requirements of people and has a vision to drive what it will take to change situations in countries or nations. Exclusion or marginalization was one of the biggest challenges that we had in Kenya. And I remember saying yesterday that a full stomach is magical when it comes to security and stability. Poverty, that is the biggest source of exclusion, informs crime and instability in countries. To deal with these challenges, we have an array of programs and initiatives to mainstream the participation of 70% of our population who are young people. Is number one, not just to give them education, but to bother about what is the quality, what is the relevance of education that we are giving to young people. And that is why we are re-engineering education and training so that it is competence-based and to enrich the skills of young people to be able to have what it takes for them to contribute their talent and expertise in driving progress and prosperity of our country. In that line, we've set out to do the first half of the country to make sure that there is a training facility, inform the education, change the education curriculum so that young people don't necessarily go to school to learn when Vasco da Gama arrived in the East African coast, but for them to have the skills that will enable them to participate meaningfully in the economy of our country. Secondly, the average age of a farmer in Kenya is 60 years. That's the average age of a farmer. The reason being, farming, as President Museveni said, is peasant, smallholder, small scale, with no technology, no insufficient science around it. We have said we want to move farming to the next level, to commercialize farming, to put farming at a level where young people using technology, modern age initiatives can participate in farming. That is why we are moving the farming in Kenya from peasant farmers, mainly carried out by 60-year-olds on average, to modern agriculture, based on technology, commercial farming, that young people can bring their talent, expertise, and skills to drive it. We believe that we will be able to enhance the productivity of farming from an average, for example, you are talking about maize, from 15, 20 acres a bag to between 80 and 100 acres a bag if you bring in technology, irrigation, and skills. Lastly, let me say, there is something manufacturing does to value that is magical. And to work on our manufacturing sector, we have 3 issues. And I once discussed this with President Museveni in his farm when I visited him. And the thing he asked me is, my friend, young man, electricity. Even if somebody had told Idi Amin electricity is important, he would have possibly built the biggest dam in Uganda. Informed by that wise engagement with President Museveni, this year in Kenya, we are setting out to generate 3 times energy or electricity that has been generated in 50 years in our country. Because we believe that energy, availability of energy, will not only supply of not just enhancing supply, but making sure that it is affordable, will stimulate investments in manufacturing sector. And that is tied, of course, to the initiatives that President Kagame has already alluded to with transport, railway, roads, making sure that our harbors and our airports are more efficient. That is the direction in which we are pushing, so that ultimately we mainstream the participation of the majority of Kenyans in participating and contributing their talent and knowledge and energy in driving our economy and making sure that we eliminate exclusion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ruto. Now, His Excellency President Kagame, I would like to start out by congratulating you, not on hosting this conference. You've hosted so many conferences. This one is only bigger, that's all. Not because Kigali is a very clean city. This has been known to the world for a long time. Not because of the safety and security that we feel while we're here, because also that is known. But I want to congratulate you on something that happened a week ago, on Saturday to be exact, when Arsenal Football Club won the English Football Association Cup after 9 years of waiting. And I join you in your jubilation because I shared your anguish for 9 years. And eventually, after all the frustrations of the fans, on Saturday, this was delivered for the first. And we hope that is the beginning of a new era for our club. But that speaks to the frustrations that Africans see with so much potential, with with abundant land, irrigable land, minerals, forestry products, and so on and so forth. And yet, we fail to deliver development and progress and happiness and well-being for our people. We are a bit like Arsenal until last Saturday. Now, do you see this Africa Rising, this phrase Africa Rising, as really a sustainable construct given all the dissent, all the dissensions, all the conflicts, all the exclusion, all the wars? Because we hardly spent 6 months without another country in Africa falling into some kind of conflict, be it civil or otherwise. And increasingly now, I am seeing, I'm sure you're seeing, Your Excellency, that these conflicts are opening the door for a new domination of Africa by outsiders. Because we are also incapable of solving our own problems, and we have to rely on the people who enslaved us in the past to come and pull the chestnuts out of the fire for us. How sustainable do you think this Africa Rising is?
Well, thank you, General. First of all, for making my work easier, especially to speak after the distinguished panelists, whom, by the way, I first of all want to thank President Museveni, President Bongo, Deputy President William Ruto. They have always been with and for us in moments like this, even when we are hosting this big conference. So I just first wanted to thank them and welcome them again. But also, I will build straight on the very important points they have made. They have almost said everything that I have liked to hear, but also build on it then to answer your question. Now, if Africa is even capable of doing things that are close to miracles and everything else, why should we fail to sustain the kind of growth, inclusive growth, that develops our continent? But of course, countries, or a continent like ours, I think if we look at it, say, it's a family anyway that we are. But in every family, you have, initially used to say the head of family, but these days it is the heads of the family, because you have the man and the woman always. So there are two heads of the family. But for the children, for example, in the family, how they turn out to be depends so much on the upbringing. What is the upbringing? What are the conditions in which they have been growing up? So in the same way, the continent, our continent, if we looked at, well, the different constituent parts, whether you are talking about countries or you are talking about the youth, women, and everybody else, we are imagining the conditions, the environment in which we have been brought up. How have they affected us? How are they affecting us? And what are we ready to do to shape these conditions or to harness them for our improved lives? Of course, here comes into play a number of things. We have heard so much about leadership, absolutely, and leadership doesn't mean presidents alone, or it also goes to different levels, because you find many actors at different levels who, if they don't play their part correctly, then something will be missing. In fact, including the youth that we value so much and even want to keep talking about. These youths, as President Museveni said, and the President and the President alluded to that, it's about the quality as well. But this quality will come as a result of different interactions within the environment we find ourselves. So really, if Africa, we have everything, we are really spoiled for everything. Whether it is resources, the so-called natural resources we talk about, it's the people, their ingenuity, the cultures, the traditions. There is so much that we have. Yes, and we find we are growing at close to 6% per annum. This says something. But at the same time, as we are growing significantly, importantly, we are also the poorest continent. I mean, this tells us there is a lot we have, but there's also a lot we are probably not doing right. And we have got to think about it. And again, as I said earlier, we rise together or we fall together. I don't think it is going to be enough for one country in our continent to do so well when others are doing so badly. And we really hope that then at the end of the day, things will be fine across the continent. It just won't happen. Now, you are talking about what we have suffered in our history: colonialism, slavery, external influences, and so on and so forth. I just want to remind you, by the way, for all of this I'm talking about, you don't be worried about new colonial efforts. No, the old ones haven't left us. We are still suffering that. All of these things happen. If you have a situation in different parts of the continent where things are done or influenced according to that very old relationship, sometimes we have really made ourselves very vulnerable. In fact, our weaknesses have become a source of temptation. You know, we tempt people to abuse us. We really lay ourselves bare, and because of the weaknesses we have, by not doing things right in our own, and really standing firm for ourselves, and saying, and then standing firm for and with each other, then you know, anybody really finds it easy to come and, you know, pick and choose what they want, and including our own resources, the resources that were being talked about, including now, you know, dictating to ourselves, the leaders of our continent, who have been given a mandate by our own people, but in a very weak situation, otherwise of enormous potential, and therefore that providing the strength we need, you know, to again pick and choose, and sometimes simply say what the leaders chosen by Africans are not the leaders that they should be choosing. We need other leaders, and we let them have it. I mean, it's a shame. So we are dealing with issues here of contempt, issues of attitudes. We ourselves manage our political processes with that actually create this temptation for people to treat us the way we don't deserve. In fact, I'm glad that in this FDB meeting, what was being highlighted so much was talked about the Africa we want. Yes, there is the Africa we want. The question is, why don't we get the Africa we want, since we have everything in our own hands? So the Africa we want actually is the Africa we deserve. The Africa we deserve is that Africa that the Africans themselves should be capable of managing, because there is no reason why we shouldn't be able to manage our Africa. And so I think there is a lot we have to do, but there is a lot we have in our hands. We have all kinds of tools to bring to bear on dealing with the kinds of difficulties our continent faces. And I hope the young people really take notice of this and simply stop being influenced by, again, certain external factors, and you find our youth don't grow up, some of them, as real Africans who want to later on take responsibility of leadership in Africa. You find they're just copying from outside things that actually the outsiders themselves don't even build on for being where they are. But you find those are the things that are brought to us. So I think here in this room and beyond, we have everything to change and transform our continent the way we deserve.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Your Excellencies. Now, the youth. Where is the youth? Could some marshals please help me to identify where the youth are? Because I want to give priority to the youth. Here. Briefly introduce yourself and where you're coming from, and then ask your question.
Yeah. Good afternoon. My name is Samuel Wanze. I'm the Chief Investment Officer for Hairs Holdings Group, an African investment company based in Lagos, Nigeria. I wanted to use this opportunity to really, put something on the table. It's something that has been passionate in our hearts where we come from, and also something that has been raised in various fora where we are discussing issues around Africa as a whole. Historically, Africa has never really done business with itself. Or even if we have, it has been very minimal compared to the kind of business transactions we've done with the international world. And in the last couple of years, we've seen that increase dramatically. Now, there is an issue we are looking at, which is how do we sustain a situation where there is increased intra-Africa integration, because this is very important for us that are coming up behind, to create an Africa that is one, that is strong, and that can stand and take its role in the world, and also to sustain this whole concept of Africa rising. Now, there are three areas that comes to my mind for which I want to implore our leaders to help us look more into. One is the issue of integrated infrastructure. Historically, we've had ports in Africa that move goods from Mombasa to Europe, from Lagos to, Asia. But there's been very little infrastructure in place that helps to move goods and services and people in around the continent. And this is very important for us to facilitate and sustain the kind of momentum we are seeing growing. So there is to be some kind of collaboration at the sovereign level for us to do more projects or carry out more ideas that help to improve intra-Africa infrastructure. And I've mentioned just transportation, but there are other areas. There's also areas in, in power and in other things. We are seeing some movement, in aviation and all of that, but a lot more must be done for us to sustain the kind of growth that we are looking for. That's one. The second thing is
No. I'm not going to allow you to say the second thing, because we need as many people as possible to give their voice as well.
Okay, I won't dwell on them. Let me just mention
your point
the bullet
is taken.
point. Just a bullet point. The second one is financial systems, and the third one is technology. Because we are seeing an increased growth of technology usage across the continent, but just to find ways of how we having policy articulation that allow us to operate more in an integrated fashion.
Okay.
Thanks.
Your voice has been heard. It's not a question really to the heads of state, it's just a comment. It's an appreciation of the situation on the ground in Africa. Next. Yes.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Alice Sanassé, je suis rwandaise. Je travaille comme Junior Professional Associate à la Banque mondiale. Ma question est, vous voulez que les jeunes soient impliqués dans le leadership, mais en même temps, il n'y a pas de systèmes qui sont mis en place pour qu'on puisse prendre ces positions. Si je vais postuler pour un job de leadership, par exemple, dans le secteur privé, ils vont me demander 25 ans d'expérience ou 15 ans d'expérience. Alors, comment, en tant que jeune, on puisse être impliqué dans ce genre de positions, alors que les gens d'expérience qu'ils demandent ne correspondent pas à notre génération? Merci.
Merci, mais votre question est adressée à qui?
À tout le monde. C'est tous des présidents et ils ont tous le même problème.
May I take on that?
Yes.
Yes, because she says she's from Rwanda.
Yes.
Yeah. And of course, I think maybe what we can say here, more needs to be done, maybe, or we can keep scaling up what we are doing. But it's not that there are no such opportunities or that nothing's being done. Starting with what she has just said, I think she's talking of holding a certain position, which I think is good enough. But either there is a lack of information, which can be blamed both ways. Sometimes when information is there, for people not to have it, either it is the problem of the one who should have had it, who should have gone out and looked for it, or the other one who should also have disseminated it. So like in the case of Rwanda, I mean, all our institutions are actually led by these young people, whether in the public service, in the public service, in the private sector, and so on and so forth. They're part of it. Even if one did not attribute it to an effort, it has just happened by default, because our young people are the ones we have. We have a very young, youthful population. The demographics are such that under 20 is 50%, under 30 is 70%, and the skills are just in the hands of these young people, because the older ones, most of them who had the skills are no more. They passed away in the tragic history that we had here, and so on and so forth. So really, I think the point is taken. It's to create an enabling environment. It's to have people participate and also avail the opportunities that should not only make the youth productive. At the end of the day, it is the country that benefits.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Now, next, let's move this way. Are you a delegate or are you a marshal?
Your Excellencies, my name is Sandra Idosu. I'm from Benin Republic, but I live in Rwanda and I work here. I have a question because as a youth and when I discuss with some of my friends, one of the issues that we often face is that yet we talk about integration. We want Africans to work in other African countries, but one of the issues we face is that traveling within Africa is really difficult. I mean, I live here, but when I have to go to Kenya, because I work sometimes there, or when I have to go to Uganda or to Burundi, each time I travel, I need a visa. And it's much more difficult for me to to work within here than being in Europe. Because when I have a Schengen visa in Europe, I can go to any of these countries. So really, when are we going to be able to travel within Africa and being able to work easily? And I think it's an area that if you're able actually to find solutions for, we would be able to help and develop our continent. Thank you.
Thank you. That one can be handled by any one of you, Your Excellencies. But I think Deputy President Ruto had touched on that, on the Northern Corridor, I think, and the President Kagame, I think, talked about that. Let's have some more young people. Young people, especially women.
Thank you. My name is Jamila Abdullahi, and I'm a consultant with the African Development Bank. I think a lot of the questions that I have been posed, but there are two other questions that I would like to pose to the Honorable President. One has to do with the question of creating a space for African youth to also talk about their hopes, expectations, ideas for the future. Because you have a lot of African youth who go to conferences, but they tend to be outside the continent. As we have this opportunity here for leaders, current leaders, to talk about what we're trying to do over the next 50 years, would it be possible to create an African youth summit of some sorts, whereby African youth themselves can also discuss these issues and hopefully have current leaders around to also look at ways of integrating those issues into current strategies. The second thing has to do with skills development. I'm from Ghana. I studied up till high school in Ghana, but I did my university degree and master's in Europe and the US. And there was a very strong focus on career development and on asking yourself, what am I interested in? What am I good at? How do I seek to impact? But I find that Ghana's education system, for instance, with the possible exception of Ashesi University, we don't ask those questions. We don't ask about value propositions and what we stand for. So how, probably to President Kagame, how is Rwanda redefining its value systems and incorporating that into its development objectives? Thank you.
Please conclude. I think we have heard the voices of the youth. The elderly people here will not speak today because they spent the whole week speaking from one forum to another. So President Mkapa, you are not given any chance today. Rather, I will take this opportunity to ask the presidents to respond in a minute or two to what they've received from the audience, but also to say whatever else they want to say. And I will start with the Benjamin of the panel, His Excellency Ruto, and I'll end with the permission of Mr. Kagame again. President Kagame, you'll pardon me if I ask your doyen to be the last to speak, Yoweri Museveni. Your Excellency Ruto, please.
I will start with the gentleman from Lagos, and he made a very strong point on making sure that our ports are efficient, especially in making sure that trade in Africa, intra-Africa trade or regional trade in Africa is facilitated. There are steps being made. There is good news that is coming out. I can tell this forum, and I have in this panel President Museveni and President Kagame, that because of that realization, goods now coming from Mombasa to Kigali take 6 days. It used to take 22 days. I can also say goods leaving Mombasa for Kampala now take 4 days. It used to take 14 days. I mean, so there is effort being made. There is a realization that we must make intra-Africa trade efficient so that we can expand it and make Africa work together and grow and create prosperity that is shared in this continent. Lastly, the question that was raised about skills, and I think I did allude to it, that there is a realization that we must equip our young people with the necessary skills that will harness their talent and effort and energy in driving our economies. And lastly, access to credit by medium, small enterprises, and young people. I think we need to change the financing model so that it is not about collateral, it is about the quality of the ideas that go into the business plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Le Président Bongo Ondimba, 1 minute ou 2 pour conclure la session.
Well, thank you. I'm tempted to say that we Africans have to be also practical. We have heard talking about, integration, trade, all these things. Of course, they sound that they're more sexy than to speak about security issues. We will not have integration. We will not be able to move from one part to another without securing the continent first. And this is right now on our table, as leaders, one of the most challenging, problem that we face. So that's why when I say that what is the youth saying? The youth is saying that, you guys, we like you very much, but, enough talk, action. Action for us is to sit down and say, well, let's be practical. Can I take my car and drive from Libreville to Kigali? I can't do that. So when we meet, in Addis Ababa, we have to be practical. What are we going to do to link, for instance, to have a railway going from Cairo to Cape Town? When are we going to build roads linking the continent? These are practical problems that we have to solve. It doesn't make any sense for us to go on speaking about such and such when we cannot put our minds together, cannot put our efforts together, our monies together to be able to ourselves, African, start financing, tools like that are very important. You see? So that's why I say practicability is very much important for us now, because the rest will follow naturally. Once we start building good infrastructure, the rest will follow. But it's also fair to recognize that for the last 50 years, we have come a long way. And this is something that people do not recognize. We have made great efforts. No continent on this planet has done in the last 50 years what we Africans have done. Now we need more ambition, and we need more political will to serve that ambition. Thank you.
Thank you, President Bongo Ondimba. You really surprised me. I didn't know you spoke English so well.
Well, you didn't ask me.
No, honestly, I was preparing myself to receive at least 3 heads of state who are Francophones, and I put him in that category. And just look at him, I could go there and learn some English myself.
Didn't they say that Africa is the land of miracles?
President Kagame, please.
Thank you, but don't ask me. I don't speak much French. But I definitely want to build on what President Bongo has just said. That is very important. And just 3 points. One is about peace and security that should create good environment for the continent to do what we must do. That is key, and I think we can repeat it many times, but we have to. The second point here is about implementation again, which the President mentioned. There are many things we can do. For example, and I think it has come from the audience as well, the need for infrastructure linking different parts of our continent. That's absolutely necessary. But there's the other part, the simpler part, the softer part, which we should also get right at this time. We can't wait. Even with the lack of infrastructure, people can still move from one place to another with a lot of difficulties only relating to infrastructure. But we shouldn't be facing difficulties in terms of visas. So we should address that. But whatever concerns are there, and there might be different legitimate concerns, I think we can also find a solution around that. For the youth, and many things that still have to be done, again, I want to say, for example, if you look at national levels, I know, beginning with my own country, there are different youth organizations and structures and institutions to actually work towards empowering the youth. Even as I know, at the African Union level, we have seen youths participate. Well, for example, even here, as I said, we have youth representation even in parliament. So the youth are really catered for. Maybe we need to add more beef to that and do better and do more. But the structures, the understanding, the focus on making sure that the youth are taken care of, I think that is happening. But sometimes it sounds like nothing is there or nothing is being done. And I think I attribute it to lack of information or proper. Maybe we should improve that. And if there's anything we haven't done, then we should be able to step up and do it. So again, I just want to say, and with more integration, with more focus, with more implementation, which the President Bongo has just said, being practical, doing the very things we must do, and just end the long story of discussions. So I think that is what I want to contribute. Thank you.
President Yoweri Museveni.
Many of the problems in Africa are definitional. So recently, in order to try and help some of the audiences in Uganda, I mentioned to them about two kings, two modern kings, because in Africa they understand kings. One king is the consumer, the one who buys what you produce. You have heard that Europe has been in a crisis. In Europe, they have everything. They have got infrastructure, they have got everything, but the crisis they have there is that they don't have consumers, enough consumers to buy what is being produced by the factories. And this is not the first time. Dr. Kaberuka, the economist, knows what happened in 1929 when there was a collapse, almost a collapse of the capitalist system, because there were not enough consumers. So therefore, what the young man from from Lagos was saying is very crucial. Somebody to buy what you produce. So therefore, market integration is very, very important. Some of this growth we are talking about here is from the regional trade. How much is Uganda selling to South Sudan? How much is Rwanda selling to Uganda? How much is Uganda selling? How much is Kenya selling to? I am the biggest aid to Kenya here, because I buy so much. We buy so much of what they produce. So this is one king. We need the African market. We also need the external market. That is the one that will stimulate growth of enterprises. If you have got an enterprise producing something and nobody buys it, it will collapse. Now, the second king is the entrepreneur, the one who can produce a product, the one who has got the knowledge, has got the insight to know what is needed, to take an opportunity and start producing something, manufacturing or agriculture or whatever. That is the second king. We've got in Uganda, I have a lot of kings. There are many, but the modern ones are these two. But then there is a facilitator. Somebody must facilitate these two kings to link up. And this is the government and the private sector to provide what His Excellency was saying, President Bongo, security. The government must facilitate this linkage between these two people by providing security. The infrastructure, the roads, the electricity, all this. Vice President Ruto talked about it. When we generate electricity, we improve transport. What is happening is that we lower the costs of doing business in our economy here. Now, when you lower the cost of doing business in an economy, then it is easy for me to start a factory, and that factory will make profit. And when the factory makes profit, it will employ more people, and so on and so forth. So if you have got very high transport costs, very high electricity costs, how will the factories survive? That's how China has been able to grow so fast, because they solved the issue of infrastructure. Now, finally, this infrastructure should be built by us, primarily. But we cannot build this infrastructure if we do not prioritize our spending very carefully. You find a lot of wage demands. People want very high wages, even when there are no roads. Okay, we can pay you, but how will the factories come? In Uganda, I've been struggling with this. I don't know, Dr. Kaberko, whether he talked about this and the economists, but I heard that in China and in India, one of the things they did was to suppress wages in order to save money to invest. But here, that's what I heard. I have not read, but I heard about it. But here in Africa, even when there's nothing, high wages. So really there are a number of things we need to sort out. Now, in the case of Uganda, we have been struggling with this problem, and we have been able to save money. We are now investing in the roads. Even the railway, we're about to start. But fortunately, our Chinese friends have come. They say they can assist us. Now, fortunately, we have now discovered oil in Uganda. There is petroleum there. In Kenya, there is petroleum. In Gabon, there is petroleum. In Rwanda, I think they're in danger of having some petroleum. Now, with this petroleum and gas in Tanzania, there is gas. With this petroleum and gas, we can now really fund infrastructure. But we must be clear about the two kings, the market, the African market here, and also the external market, and the entrepreneur. One day, in Africa, we need a type of renaissance to wake up. President Thabo Mbeki was talking about the renaissance. I don't know how it helped them in South Africa, whether they woke up. But we need to wake up. One day, I had a very big leader in my country, very big leader. He was sitting on my left. There was an American billionaire whose turnover is bigger than the GDP of East Africa. His wealth is bigger than the combined GDP of East Africa. He was sitting on this side. So I was trying to link the two. The billionaire with this very important big man. He was not excellency, he was slightly smaller than excellency. But Now, after he linked the two, then this one sitting in the chair swinging like this. He said, you write to me, that the other man should write to him. I told him in our local language that this man cannot write to you.
Doesn't even need it.
So, there is total, you can see a lot of lack of understanding. The stimuli that need to be applied to these economies of ours in order to grow. As the Bible says, they leave undone what they ought to have done, and they do that they ought not to have done, and there's no truth in them. This is part of the problem. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President Museveni. Your Excellencies, I would like to thank you very much for taking this time to be with us and to share with us your ideas, which are really stimulating. And I hope that the youth in this audience will have taken these words, these insights, the advice that you've given them to heart, and that we are going to work more diligently so that in 50 years' time, those who will be around, and I'll be there too to moderate this session, don't have to go back to this kind of discussion. We should be able to take account of what we have achieved in the coming 50 years when the time comes, in 2063. But in the meantime, there are things that we can do immediately. We can remove visas. Visas can be done away with tomorrow. Madame Zuma can print African passports. Not tomorrow, next month. We can start talking to each other across ethnic, religious, and racial boundaries tonight. These are things that the heads of state have been telling us this morning. And I thank you all for listening very carefully, very attentively. And I wish you bon appetit because we are going for lunch. And I've remembered as the session was going on that I forgot to introduce myself because I wanted to economize the use of my voice. But now that I've come to the end, I can introduce myself. My name is Generali Ulimwengu. I'm a journalist based in Dar es Salaam. Kwaherini, mwatashe, murakoze, mwebalenyo, siyabonga, asanteni sana, shukran jazila, and let's have one big round of applause for this great man. Asante.
Hata watu wakuseme